Good morning. Welcome to the Hospitality Hotline. It's Thursday at 10 o'clock. Every week I show up here on Instagram and Facebook and I answer hospitality questions. And this week I love it when we hit on a topic that elicits so much response. Earlier this week I announced that I was going to be talking about hosting large groups in your home. And man, you guys gave me a bunch of great questions. In fact, so many questions that I've decided to turn this into 2 weeks worth of answers. There were a ton of questions about the food related aspects of hosting a large group in your home, and that is what we're going to look at next week. This week we are going to look at space and heart related questions regarding the hospitality of large groups. So in addition to that, as I've been preparing, I've decided to create a guide to hosting large groups in your home that I'm going to make available next week. So look for that. I'm going to compile all this great information, give you some of my best tips, tricks, menu ideas, strategies for hosting large groups in your home. And that will be available next Thursday. But today I'm going to dive in. I'm going to answer some great questions, hopefully share some insights. And I want to start by telling you I happen to have a very recent success story related to hosting a large group. Now, I need you to hear me say that what I'm about to tell you happens to be a success story, but you and I both know that things do not go 100% of the time the way you want them to. This just happened to be one of those moments where I looked around and I was like, it worked, it all worked, it was so great. And it just happened this past Sunday. We hosted a large group in our home after church this past Sunday. We had our community group over for dinner. And the church that I attend meets at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're usually done about 5:15 or 5:30, and we had invited everyone to come over directly after church for dinner. And I went to church. So I left about 10 minutes early just to kind of like get a head start and be at my house when people were there. But I want to tell you how that evening went to paint a picture of kind of what we're looking for, or what I think success in hosting a large group might look like. Number one, I spent about 20 minutes on Sunday actually doing work to get ready for that event. The people that were in my home did not bring anything. They showed up empty-handed because it's hard to come from church and bring something, and I just really wanted to make it easy for people. We had 26 total people, 14 adults, 9 large kids, meaning high schoolers, middle schoolers, older elementary, and 3 tiny kids. We didn't have any babies, but 3 toddlers. When everyone arrived, I pointed people in the direction of the drinks. I showed them where they could put their purses. I let them know that our backyard was open for their children to play on the playground. I sat and had a drink with a couple of the girls. Then when everybody had arrived and it was time to eat, we gathered. I gave a few self-serve instructions, and then I got out of the way. Everybody helped themselves to dinner. I sat and ate with my friends in the living room. We laughed and had a great time connecting. And then when it was over and everybody left, I threw away a bunch of trash. I put some dishes in the dishwasher. I washed 1 large pot, and I kind of like, tucked all the chairs in, turned out the lights, turned out the music. All in, my effort level the day of the party was very minimal. It was the kind of thing that felt, I won't say it felt easy because it did require work, but it was the kind of effort that felt attainable. It felt easy for me to fold into my Sunday. And that's what I want for you. I want for you to know how to open your home to large groups and to have some tools that you can put into practice that will help you accomplish and be able to be present at your own party, to be able to enjoy it, to not have 3 hours of cleanup waiting for you when everyone leaves. Hospitality always requires work. It always requires planning and effort and intentionality and attention to certain details. And it's never going to be quote unquote easy, but it can be done in a way that doesn't wipe you out and drain you. And that's what we're headed for. So let's dive in to our questions that we're going to talk about today. Above all else, the number one tool, the number one tip that I want to tell you is you need to make a plan. You need to give attention to all the things that need to be taken care of and accomplished. And here's why. If you're having 2 or 3 people over to your home and you forget to do something like, I don't know, get ice, it takes very little effort or time to get ice for 3 people. When you're entertaining a larger group, when you're opening your home to more people that can fit around your table, when you've got 25 humans in your home and you realize you've forgotten ice and 25 people need ice, I want you to think for a second about how much effort and time and energy and sort of all the steps involved that would take. Do we have something large enough to hold all that ice? I need to go buy that much ice. I need to bring it back. Like every little step begins to take way more time and energy because you have to do it on such a big scale. That's the only thing that makes hosting large groups in your home difficult. It's the scale. You could have me over for a meal and one person is easy. You can do anything for one person. Multiply that by 25 or 30 and it takes a lot longer and a lot more energy. So make a plan. Okay, here's the first question. And these are space related questions. The question is, how do I manage space for everyone? Any tricks? And I think what they're asking is like the literal space, like how much room people take up and how can I accommodate that? And here are my tips. You have set your home up for your family, day-to-day living, and that's great. And you probably have beautiful throw pillows and you probably have furniture in certain positions because there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe 6 of you. But your home is set up for a very small group of people. When you invite people in and you're gonna have more humans taking up space in your home, move things. Like you need to move things to create more open space. One of my favorite tips is, I'm sure your throw pillows are beautiful, but if it limits the number of people that can sit on your couch, move the throw pillows so more people can sit on your couch. If you have oversized furniture that kind of creates bottlenecks, then move the oversized furniture so people can move around a little bit. Do not be afraid to move furniture. Do not be afraid to bring in furniture. A lot of times you can bring in chairs from other places, or sometimes I will push chairs against a wall to kind of create more places for people just to kind of plop down with their dinner, but also to open up the amount of mingle room. So depending how many people you're having, don't be afraid to move the furniture. Also, guys, you don't live in an event venue. You live in a home. So the fact that it's going to feel crowded is perfectly fine. No one expects you. Every home has a limit. I don't care if you live in a huge mansion, there's a limit, and people understand that homes have limits and that you are not an event venue. But particularly if you just live in a very modest sized home, there are limits to that. And when you invite a large group over, people understand that there are limits to the space, and so it being crowded is not a negative thing. That's the reality of having a lot of people in your home. So don't get hung up on the crowded factor. Just make accommodations for it. Make it easy for people to move around, make it easy for people to sit down, and make it easy for people to have somewhere to put their drink. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Okay, the next question is very similar, but not having enough places for people to sit. And then another one was, how do I create enough room for everyone to sit? So basically the same question worded differently. This is the definition of a large group, in my opinion. A large group is, are there more people in your home than you can seat at your table? Then that's a large group. If you have a place at your table for everyone, that's not a large group, depending on the size of your table. But the second that you have more bodies than chairs at your table, you have a large group. It is not an assumption, if you're having a large group, that you need to have a table with a set place for everyone. It's okay not to have that. In fact, no one that came to our home this past Sunday thought that we were going to have a seated dinner for 26 people. I can fit 10 people comfortably around my dining room table. We have a small round breakfast room table that can seat 4 or 5. So there were always going to be people that didn't have a seat at a table. But adults know how to manage that. Adults know how to, hold a plate of food and perch themselves on an ottoman or a couch or an armchair and make the best of it. So you do not have to have a seated place for every person coming to your home, unless you're hosting a holiday meal. And this is perhaps the one exception where some large groups are centered around a holiday meal like Thanksgiving or Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever. Birthday, we have huge family gatherings for birthdays. I think in those situations, it probably, depending on the dynamics of your family, it probably is important to have a seated place for everyone. So what do you do? What do you do when you're having family, 25 people over for Thanksgiving dinner, and you can only seat 15? You're gonna need to rent or borrow folding table and chairs, and you're gonna need to get tablecloths to cover them, and you're gonna make them look as nice as the real tables, because part of the responsibility of hosting that holiday meal is accommodating the needs of your guests. If you cannot make that happen, perhaps your home is not the place to host the holiday meal. I know there are exceptions, and I'm not meaning to make broad generalizations about things being right or wrong, but generally speaking, for holiday meals, people expect to sit at a table. Generally speaking, at not holiday meals, people do not expect to sit at a table. So keep that in mind. Now, the one thing that I always think about in groups where there are adults and children of different ages, like I said earlier, I'm an adult. If I'm in someone's home and I have a plate of food, I can sit on the armrest of a couch and eat my food. I can do that. Small children cannot. They just don't have it. That's going to create a mess. It's real hard for them to do all that. So most of the time, most of our open seating, if there are children in attendance, they get to sit at the table. In fact, please seat your children at my table instead of the couch, because it's easier to clean up and they're going to spill. So keep that in mind, that children require a seat at a table, maybe even more so than adults. I know that when we get large families together, there can be more children than adults sometimes. So sometimes you're really accommodating the youngest members of the group more than you're accommodating the larger ones, and that's okay. Like that, sometimes that's the nature of having and hosting families. So keep that in mind. Okay, another question that I got does have to do with children, and I think this is a great question. The question, it wasn't really a question, it was a statement, and it said, kids, how to keep little ones entertained and not break things. Totally get it. I'm not sure I can give you a strategy for how not to break things. If you have something that's really important to you that you don't want broken, that's out at arm's reach, you might want to put that away. I mean, that's just common wisdom. I don't typically like kid-proof my house when we have people over, but that's because I think most of what we have out, I guess technically they could mess it up, but it wouldn't be detrimental if they did. So you can decide that, but you are going to have to be directive. You are going to have to set some limits and boundaries on what you're comfortable with when other children come into your home. I did a whole hospitality hotline on this topic. If you go back and look at the previous ones on the blog, it is called Hosting Hurdles. And in Hosting Hurdles, I share a lot of my opinions and strategies for what to do when you have a lot of children in your home. And I'm going to direct you there instead of repeating all that information here, but basically you are going to have to step up. If you don't want a group of children to run rampant all over your home, you're going to have to step up, and I give you some strategies on how to do that. I give you some language to use that might be helpful in getting the results that you want, and then I talk about ways you can step in when things are not going the way that you want them to go. So go watch that one if you'd like to. That's its own topic. But if you're having a large group and you want to make allowances for children, which I totally think you should, My children are all older. My youngest is in 4th grade right now. So we don't have little kids anymore. But we tend to have a lot of little kids in our home, and I have a strategy for that. We have a set, like a little basket of toys for babies, like little, blocks or whatever. My son still has his whole collection of Matchbox cars and Legos in his room that we will pull out from time to time if the situation presents itself. But one thing you can do, if you find yourself with an army of small children when you're hosting a large group, is to go ahead and be preemptive, to go ahead and know, okay, we're going to designate the dining room table or the big breakfast room table or something for the children, because I know that they're going to need something to do. Now, my number one strategy is like, get them outside, go to the backyard, get out the scooters, get out the basketball, get out whatever you have outside is best. But if it's, sometimes it rains, or sometimes that's not an option, or whatever. Sometimes you want to put the dog outside and keep I get it. There are situations. Colors and coloring pages set out on the table are a great activity. Little hands need something to do. The little tiny dollar-sized tubs of Play-Doh, judiciously placed and, on the table, not just everywhere in the house, because I don't want Play-Doh all over my house. Something for little hands to do. We had a family over one time that had children about the same age as ours, a little younger. We set out apples to apples and Jenga. And all 8 of them, in a variety of ages and stages and genders, they played apples to apples and entertained themselves. And then they played Jenga and laughed so loud we could not hear ourselves talking over them. So that was a good sign. Little toddlers, it's really fun to put out Fruit Loops and yarn and make Fruit Loop necklaces. This is my favorite birthday party trick. We would string Fruit Loops on a piece of yarn when people arrived, just to give little hands something to do, and it's also edible, which is a perk. They'll sit there and eat that. But one thing I want to say, and I hope this is obvious, but maybe it's not. Setting up a children's table is not a substitute for a babysitter. Small children are not going to just there's a children's table, I'm going to sit here and entertain myself for an hour. You're going to still have to be directive. You're going to hope that the parents are going to watch what's going on. It's just an allowance of something for them to do other than mill around. It's not a substitute. They're going to require supervision. You know this, but sometimes it can be helpful to say, oh yeah, let's go. Can you draw me a unicorn or a pretty princess? Or how many snakes can you make out of Play-Doh? Give them something to do, and then you get 10 minutes of maybe quiet talking to another mom while you keep one eye on the kids' table. It's just an allowance. It's not going to solve the problem of having children in your home that might interrupt your conversation or require oversight, because newsflash, kids need attention, and having them as part of a large gathering it's not an adult-only party. It's a family party, so kids are going to still need to be watched. I have been to certain gatherings where I don't know, as an added layer of provision, and it was such a gift, and it doesn't work all the time, but hiring a high school student to sort of be an extra set of hands, if you have a lot of toddlers and babies, can be a real gift in certain situations. Certainly not a requirement, certainly not necessary for every casual gathering, but there were some instances where we were invited to large gatherings at other people's homes, and it was so nice when I got there. The host was like, this is Sarah and Stacy, and they're here just to help, so if they can help get your kids food or whatever. I mean, it was just this oh my gosh, so above and beyond, and so not necessary. But if you're hosting something that might come in handy, or if you really do want to free up adults to be able to connect with other adults, hiring a couple of high school students or even middle school students to be extra pairs of hands for the children, or to run the children's table, that can really go a long ways. So keep that tucked away as a trick in your back pocket. Okay, we are going to shift a little bit and talk about some heart-related issues. This one is good. How do I include everyone in conversation and make them feel welcomed? My answer is pretty straightforward. If you want to include everybody in conversation, then you need to be conversational with everybody. If you want to initiate that, then you're going to have to play an active role. Now, keep in mind, in large gatherings, there's never one huge conversation. There are multiple smaller conversation pods that are happening, and these things are organic. You cannot control them. Let it go. Let the conversation happen. Let whoever's going to talk. What you do want to look out for is the person who is sitting alone, looking a little like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? I don't know anybody here. I think a good host is sensitive to that. And what helps me engage with people that might require a little more from me is to remember what it feels like to be the person in the room that doesn't know anybody and is freaking out and thinking, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's a really horrible, alone feeling. And I'm an introvert. I don't like to seek out conversation, but in that situation, The switch that flips for me is to remember how it feels and then to approach that person. And my tip would be lead with curiosity. Everybody likes to talk about themselves. Ask open-ended questions about them. Don't feel like you have to stay there all night, but to initiate a conversation with them is a gift, and then you can move on to something else if you want to. But you are not in control of all the conversations. You can welcome people, you cannot make them feel welcomed. We control our feelings, our responses, our actions. In no way can we control the feelings of others. So if you want to make people feel welcomed, you can do certain things that are welcoming. You can do your best to engage your heart in the art of anticipating need and expressing love. You cannot make anyone feel welcome. You can be welcoming, and that's a huge difference. Next question is, how can I make a large group, How can I make a large gathering feel really special without going way overboard in terms of spending? I love this question because you know what? Smaller parties are really easy to make feel special because you can do a lot of extra things because it's small. When you start to have a large gathering, it becomes more difficult. It's like that thing we talked about at the beginning. Like, you do one thing for one person, that's easy. You do one thing for 40 people, that's a lot of things. It takes more money, honestly. It takes more time, it takes more energy. And yet, we want it to be special. First thought, flowers go a long way. And you can buy, I have decorated my home with clippings from my yard and just done it all out, like mass, branches or leaves or whatever. You can buy inexpensive flowers in mass and put them everywhere. I think smaller arrangements everywhere are better than larger arrangements in a couple of places. So that's one way to make your flower dollar stretch. I would not underestimate the power of good music. The right playlist or the right level, like sound, like volume level of music can, I'm not kidding, make or break the way a party feels. The right kind of music can make or break the way a party feels. I have been to a lot of gatherings where there was no music, and there's this sense of awkwardness that's just hanging in the air a little bit. And all I wanted was just to, if you just turn on some background music, it gives our minds something to latch onto, and we feel less exposed. It's just the way music and sound work. So don't underestimate music. Tea lights in glass jars everywhere. A glow, they're super cheap. You don't have to buy votive holders, although you can. You can use, I use jam jars aplenty. It's the best way to cast a very special glow all over your gathering. The other thing that I love to do is party stores like Party City or Target, sometimes they don't have as much as they used to. They usually have an aisle where it's like color by color by color, like they have red and blue and green and gold and white. Choose a color, whatever it is, and just go with it. And those cheap paper products kind of everywhere, it's not expensive. The pom-poms or the garlands or the what are they called, the little fringe tassel, that's the word, tassels, the beverage napkins, like anything that you can attach kind of like a theme to and sprinkle it everywhere makes it feel special without having to spend a lot of money. This is my #1 trick for children's birthday parties. If we're having like a pink princess party, then you're gonna, everywhere you turn, you're gonna see some sort of pink something, and it's from the cheap pink aisle at Party City. I just make everything pink, and it looks very intentional and very themed, and is one of my go-to. I put wrapping paper down the table because the table is the biggest visual piece of landscape at a party. So cover it, just make a huge runner with wrapping paper, and you've instantly got something on theme. Let's see, do I have any other? Oh, this is one. Okay, less of a tip, more of a way to think about this. If you're having a large gathering and you want to do something to make it special, if you're going to do it, do it. Don't halfway do it, because halfway doing something for a large gathering just comes off a little bit paltry. It is better to not do it at all and to keep it simple than to only do it halfway and have it kind of fizzle. So go for it or don't go for it, but choose. That's part of what you do when you host a large group. You make choices that are more global. You make choices that are simpler because the scale and degree to which you're carrying those choices forward is much larger. Okay, last question. I love this. How do you politely ask people to leave? People stay incredibly late at our home. And my first thought was, that's so great. What a great challenge. I want to come to your home. Apparently, it's the place to be. Truly, it is a sign that people like being in your home. And that's a compliment. That's a gift. You're doing something right. You're doing a lot of things right. People don't want to leave. That's great. And I go to bed at 8:30, so I totally get it. And I don't know. This is hard because here's the thing. If you're going to invite people into your home, you are going to make a decision, either passively or actionably. You're going to make a decision. You're either going to decide, I'm going to engage my people and tell them exactly what I want and what I expect, or I don't want to have to do that, and I'm just going to live with the consequences. There are some subtle cues you can give, such as getting up and doing the dishes, turning off the music, blowing out the candles, taking out the trash. These are non-confrontational ways to let people know, like, party's ending. Now, there are some people who will not pick up on those cues. There are some people who will pick up on those cues and are going to stay anyway. And you need to decide, am I okay with that or not? If you are, then I'm sorry, they may stay late and that's fine. If you're not okay with it, you might have to take action. This is your home. This is your domain. And you are in charge of setting the limits and boundaries, just like with children. You're in charge of determining what goes on in your home and how you want that to go. So if you've got this pattern, you've got people staying late and you want to change that pattern, the first time might be a little rough and you might need to let people know up front, hey, we'd love to have you guys over Saturday night. We're gonna kick things off at 6:30. I'm kicking you out at 11. We're done at 11. I know, it's so fun to stay up till 4 in the morning. I can't do it anymore, I'm getting older. I'm kicking you out at 11. So they have fair warning. Then at 9:30, you may have to say, it's 9:30 guys, can I get anybody another drink? Just a reminder, we're shutting this down at 11. Because if you're serious about it, it's not gonna happen on its own. People are not gonna just naturally give you what you want if they've been doing something different this whole time. If you want to change this, you're gonna have to take action. And you can do it in a kind, generous, communicative, clear way. And then at 11, you might have to be, all right, I'm so sorry. I'm tired, I can't do it anymore. I've got to go to bed. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you. You're just gonna have to be directive. Now, beyond that, if they stay, I don't know. I don't have anything else to suggest. But if the candles are blown out, the music is off, the lights are off, I'm taking the trash out, and I've asked you to leave, if you still have someone hanging on, that's a them problem, not a you problem. But keep in mind, you've got to do what you want to do to get what you want. So I think communicating with your guests ahead of time and in the moment of what you expect from them is key, and then making good on that. But again, if you don't want to be that person, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. You don't have to. But you do have to live with the reality that people may stay at your house till 4 in the morning because you're such a good host, they don't want to leave. And I'd like to be invited to your next gathering. I won't stay till 4 in the morning. I'll stay till 8:30. Okay, that is the end of our questions for this week. And when I tell you that's only half of them, I have a whole nother crop of questions to answer next week, all related to food, menu, feeding large groups. There were so many great questions that we're gonna do all of next week just on the food aspects of large group hosting. And between now and then, I'm gonna put together a guide that has all of the tips that we've talked about today and the ones I'm gonna talk about next week, including menu suggestions and guidelines for hosting large groups in your home. Between now and then, ding dong, come in. Between now and then, if you think of anything else that you'd like me to answer related to food and hosting large groups, send it my way. It's not too late. I'd be happy to add that to the list. I hope you have a lovely day, a lovely week. I'll see you next time.